What we have just heard is two interesting things. Number one, I didn't ask him where time came from. I asked him where the universe came from. Now, the universe is an object. It's a material thing. It is of the essence of science and philosophy to ask, where did this thing come from? It is not, if we see a head in the middle of Harvard Yard, we would say, how did this get here? What happened? Richard Dawkins, in an interesting speculation, says maybe life got here because aliens brought it from outer space. Then we might ask, where did the aliens come from? Philosophers, both religious and atheist, have thought it a meaningful question to ask, where did this universe come from? Particularly because it wasn't here before. How did we get something out of nothing? That's the question. Now, in a sense, Dan Barker cleverly swapped the question from where did this big material object, the universe, come from? He has no idea. Atheism has no explanation. The most reasonable explanation is if the universe has a source. It can't be a natural source, by the way, because the universe includes all of nature. It would have to be some very powerful, let's call it omnipotent source. It would have to be a source, if you will, of unbelievable creativity, given this universe that we have, with all its laws and all its operations. My point is, he is ducking the question by proclaiming it meaningless. If this question is meaningless, then all the great atheist thinkers from Nietzsche to Heidegger to Bertrand Russell have been talking nonsense all their lives. All of them, too, thought it meaningful to ask, how did we get something out of nothing? So if he's not willing to address this, you may say, properly basic question, it's sort of like if I were to ask him, how do you know that the past even exists? And he declares, well, I really don't know. Time is really an ethereal concept. Causation itself, this is the kind of gobbledygook that is substituting for a real answer to a real question, which is give an account for why we are here with a universe that we can contemplate. Did this just happen by accident? Did random chemicals produce it? Or is he basically saying he has no answer, and so he's pretending that it's a meaningless question?
All right, thank you, Mr. D'Souza. Thank you, Lewis, as well. We'll now be moving on to the second section of the debate. Kelly Bodwin will be asking questions on ethics.
Hi, guys. All right. Our first question here is for Mr. Barker, and this question was in part contributed by the Harvard Radcliffe Christian Fellowship, so you should know it's not all coming from the secular society. Mr. Barker, if there is no God, how have you constructed a moral code for yourself? And do you feel that this code is specific to you personally, or can there be absolute morals without religion?
Great. We do whole debates on this topic. There is no morality with a capital M in the universe. Morality is a label for a concept. A functioning mind assigns value to things, and we choose, based on our nature, things that are valuable to us and our species and others. Atheists do not consider that there's a moral code. That's like religious talk, to talk about a moral code. There can be a legal code, of course. A society can make a legal code and we can have laws. But what atheists talk about, and I don't speak for all atheists, but we talk about moral principles. Because a code would say this action is wrong and this action is right. Principles would say this action may be right or wrong depending on the situation. For example, a woman knocks on your front door, you open the door, she's bleeding. She says her husband's trying to kill her. You bring her in and you help her out. Later on, her husband bangs on the door and says, "Do you know where my wife is?" A moral person should lie to that man. There's no code that says never tell a lie. A lie can be a very good thing. A code would say, oh, I better be virtuous and always tell the truth. The situation requires that most of the time truth-telling is valuable. But a moral person like Rahab in the Bible, who told a lie to protect God's Israelites, was praised for telling the lie. Moral codes... Paul wrote in the Bible, God is not the author of confusion. But you think of a single book that's caused more confusion than the Bible. You name it. Christianity doesn't even have a moral code. You name any social issue that's important right now. Gay rights, gay marriage, stem cell research, abortion rights, what? The war, doctor-assisted suicide. What are we struggling with in the world? Devout, Bible-believing Christians fall on both sides of this issue. They don't even have a moral code. Here's what I use, humanism basically. Most atheists that I know would call themselves humanists, and humanistic morality basically boils down to a very simple principle. It's a principle that's useful and flexible. The principle is this: you can be called an ethical, moral person if you act with the intention of minimizing harm. That's it. There's no big mystery to morality. If it is your intention to act in ways that minimize harm, and harm is a natural thing. Harm is not offending the fragile ego of some deity who wants to be worshipped every Sabbath. Harm is hunger or pain or shelter or whatever it is in the real world.
All right, sorry, thank you, Mr. Barker. I do have to cut you off here. Mr. D'Souza, you have 90 seconds to respond.
This is a question for him, not for both of us.
No, right.
Oh, you're right. The distinction between codes and principles I accept. I think that, that this is not a valid division between theism and atheism. For example, the commandment is often translated, thou shalt not kill. It really means thou shalt not murder. That's in fact its context. And so there is a distinction here between killing, and killing, one may say, the innocent, or killing premeditatively, or killing for the wrong reason. If you look, for example, at the Christian just war theory, I mean, who can argue that this has not been an enormous contribution to moral thinking in the world? This is the notion, for example, that if there's a war, traditionally wars are fought winner take all. The loser becomes, if you will, the captive of the winner. Christianity said no. Number one, war should be fought only defensively, not offensively. Second of all, you should not in general attack preemptively. Third, your response should be proportionate to the original attack. If someone from a different tribe comes and kills 5 of your guys, you can't go kill 5,000 of their guys. You should make a proportionate response. There should be some prospect of success. The ultimate goal should be peace and resolution. So here are principles, in a sense, articulated by Christianity into Western civilization that are now the legal underpinning for the UN Charter of Human Rights, for our legal definitions of torture, unreasonable coercion, and so on. So it is simply an historical fact that Christianity has embedded in our civilization, Western civilization, moral principles that even secular people live by. When you look ultimately at his thou shalt not do any harm, it's based on a rejection, one may say, of the idea that we are mere Darwinian primates. If we were...
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. D'Souza. I do have to cut you off there. Mr. Barker, you have 45 seconds to respond.
The concept you just elucidated is quite admirable, but it's not biblical. The biblical God committed mass genocide, preemptively. He offered terms of peace to these villages by saying, you can come and convert, or we'll kill you. You can be slaves, or you can be dead. That's your choice. The God of the Bible is brutal, bloodthirsty, one of the most warm. In fact, he calls himself a God of war. The principles you are explaining are humanistic principles. They are not from the Bible. They might have come from a culture in which Christianity was the dominant religion of the time, but they don't come from the founding document of that culture. So the principle, and in fact, Confucius even said it much better. Confucius said, that which you would not have done unto you, don't do unto others. Confucius had a better understanding long before Christianity, as if it would have never dawned on the human race that there's something wrong with killing without the 10 Commandments. By the way, that Hebrew word ratsak means kill. It does not mean murder. God turned right around and did the same thing and killed in his own book. He's contradictory. He does not even obey his own laws.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barker. I'm sorry I have to cut you off there.